Now that we're finished learning about major scales, we're going to start learning about minor scales. The minor scale we typically learn as having several forms. Although this isn't strictly true because most music is actually written in a combination of all forms of the minor scale. However, we do learn them separately. So we'll start with the natural minor. Here's what one sounds like. Did you hear a difference between the minor and the major scales that you've learned before? Just to remind you, here's a major scale starting on the same note. And again, the minor scale. There are actually a few different ways to think about natural minor scales and all the minor scales. I'm going to teach you a couple of different ways, and you can pick the one that makes the most sense to you. So one way to think about the minor scales is that they actually have, the natural minor scale that is, actually has the same pattern as a major scale. It just starts in a different place. Of course, you recognize the C major scale. The A natural minor scale actually has the exact same notes as a C major scale. A minor also has no sharps or flats in its natural minor form. If we take our scale and just start on an A, it still has the same notes, no sharps and no flats. But now we're starting on an A, which means that our pattern is going to start here with whole half. So really, if you've already memorized the scale pattern for a major scale, it should be easy enough to learn the scale pattern for a natural minor scale. All you have to say is whole half, and then begin with your major scale pattern. Whole half, whole half, whole. We're just taking this pattern and rotating it around so that we are starting in a different place. We just started here on this note. So whole half, whole half, whole. Same pattern, just a different starting place. But it makes a difference in the sound, right? Here's C major. And here's A minor. Do you hear a difference in how they sound? Yes. Okay. Well, let's try to build a natural minor scale using this method. Why not try C natural minor? I'll give you a moment to try and come up with the answer yourself. Go ahead and pause the video and start it again when you think you know the answer. Hopefully you got something like this. Whole, half, whole, half, whole. Is that the answer you got? Well, looking at this scale, it might give you a hint as to the other method people use for building minor scales. So some people use that method where, again, you basically take the major scale pattern and rotate it around, so you go whole, half, and then you continue like you're making a major scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole, and then you stop. But there's another way. If you look at this C major scale, that might give you an idea. Does it give you an idea? Well, some people like to just make a major scale and then lower the third note, the sixth note, and the seventh note by a half step. So that's another way to think of the major and minor scale relationship. One is to think of them in terms of what's known as the relative major and minor. The relative major is the one that shares the exact same notes as the minor. So C major and A minor are relative major and minor to each other. The other method would be to think of what we call the parallel minor. With the parallel minor, it's the minor key that starts on the same note exactly. C major and C minor are parallel minors to each other. So it depends which way you prefer to think about it. So we already talked about thinking about it in terms of its relative major and minor. We can do another example like that. Let's use D minor. Thinking about this with our first method, we could actually think F would be the relative major. F would be the key that has the same notes, the major key that has the same notes in it as D minor. In other words, the third note of the minor scale is going to be the relative major. We could think, I'm going to go whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, and then build my scale that way. That's the same way we were just doing. So we're just using the major scale pattern, right? Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and starting in a different place. And we get D to E, E to F, that's a half step, right? G, A, B flat because we need a half step, C, D. That would be our first method. Our other way would be to build a major scale and then lower the third, sixth, and seventh note by a half step. So let's try that now. We can start out by making a G major scale. We're going to go, here's our G, whole to A, whole to B, half to C, whole to D, whole to E, let's go back down here to this E, whole to F sharp, and half up to G. And that gives us a G major scale. Now to turn it into a G natural minor scale, all I would have to do is lower the third note, B, the sixth note, E, and the seventh note, by a half step, and now I have a G natural minor scale. So that's the other way you can do it. It really just depends on what you feel most comfortable with.